Hello, today I'd like to talk a little bit about the new dietary guidelines that were recently published by the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Agriculture, of course, HHS, under the direction of Secretary Kennedy. And these guidelines do differ a bit from the previous USDA dietary guidelines. There are some things that I think are an improvement and some things that I think are maybe a little bit confusing or perhaps even not appropriate. So the pyramid now is kind of an inverted one. And at the top, it has protein, dairy, healthy fats. At one corner, vegetables and fruit at the other, and then tapering down with whole grains at the bottom. And in between are some healthy fats like avocado and extra virgin olive oil, things like that. So I agree that we should increase the amount of protein that we are eating. These guidelines increase that from 0.8 up and up to 1.2 to 1.6 as an increase, and that's grams per kilogram and ideal body weight. Just bear that in mind. If you're significantly overweight, we're not talking about the weight you're at now, but your ideal body weight. In general, besides being kind of protein forward, the guidelines do recommend moving toward whole foods as opposed to highly processed foods, things like processed meats or carbohydrates that have been processed into what we would commonly call junk food. So I very much agree with that. However, the protein side of the whole foods, there's an awful lot of animal protein focus in there. Not necessarily the healthiest in terms of the amount of beef that might be recommended. The guidelines do recommend trying to control saturated fat, and of course, the fat in beef does tend to be higher in saturated fats. So you kind of have to wonder. I don't know this directly, but there are some people on the committee that devised these guidelines that do have ties to the meat industry, like the cattle industry, as well as dairy. So you have to kind of step back and try to look at these through the lens of what would really be evidence-based, science-based. In fact, the guidelines put together by the actual Dietary Guideline Advisory Committee in the government don't quite recommend what this final product was. Based on the science, it would be more of a plant-forward kind of focus, trying to increase protein that comes from things like soy and other plant products, and trying to control the amount of red meat in the diet. There is, of course, a lot of evidence in the medical literature regarding decreasing cancer risk, the less animal protein that we eat. And in general, people don't get enough fiber in their diet, so increasing plant consumption, and in particular legumes, to get both protein and fiber higher into the diet would really be the better way to go. And if you look at the guidelines put together by that advisory committee, they really look more like the Mediterranean diet to me, where the protein would be plant-based or fish like salmon, or perhaps some poultry, but really trying to minimize the red meat and perhaps control the poultry a bit as well, getting unsaturated fats from things like tree nuts as well as extra virgin olive oil. Of course, in the PREDIMED study several years ago, the branch of the study that got its fat primarily from extra virgin olive oil greatly decreased its risk for diabetes as well as heart disease. So just bear in mind that there's some things that are a little bit confusing or even misleading in the new dietary guidelines that have come out from the Department of Agriculture and also HHS. I agree that increasing protein from 0.8 grams per kilogram up to 1.2 to 1.6 is a good idea, but perhaps not focusing on using dairy and red meat to get there. Most of the population in the United States gets plenty of those things. So really to control those and bump up the plant-based or fish sources for protein, I think would be a good idea. I really agree with the focus on decreasing highly processed foods in the diet. And that also means things like artificial additives for preserving food or colors. I'm very much on board with all of that. And I do think that part of the Make America Healthy Again initiative coming down from President Trump as well as Secretary Kennedy is a good thing. Basically, whole foods, but maybe not quite the amount of animal products that's being recommended in the new guidelines would be the way to go. Of course, if you'd like to learn more about how we can help you with your healthy lifestyle, including nutrition, exercise, sleep, managing stress, and ultimately managing your weight to control a lot of things, please don't hesitate to reach out. As you know, I'm Dr. William Berger, and our practice is Northeast Medical Practice, concierge-style medicine practice in Great Neck, New York. If you'd like to call us, 516-604-3418, online at northeastmedicalpractice.com, through all these social media channels, including our YouTube channel, and also my LongevityMD podcast on Spotify, where I interview other physicians or give talks like this about how to optimize one's health for a healthy and long life. But until we see each other again, eat healthy and be in good health.